Hi, this is Amanda Burse, also known as Marcy Rhodes Darcy, and you're listening to the Married with Children podcast.
You mean like married with children?
Yes! Hey, what's happening, guys? This is Al from the Married with Children podcast, and I'm here to make a special announcement. We've been going at this now for 3 solid years. As time goes on, things change, things evolve, and we have something special that we think you're really going to like. As you know, there's a Patreon for the Married with Children podcast, and you can support the show if you'd like. We have longtime patrons of the show, and we all got talking, and they want to get involved. So we started a new chapter of the Married with Children podcast called the No Ma'am Roundtable. Patrons of the show got together, and they discussed Married with Children amongst each other. We wanted to start off with a public show, accessible to everybody. From here on out, they're all going to be Patreon exclusives. This show is Valentine's Day themed. Tyler Tigno, Luigi Pedalino, and Steven Scott got together to present you the very first episode of No Ma'am Roundtable. If you like what you hear, these guys are going to keep it going and add more and more people to this roundtable as time goes on. Of course, that seat is exclusive to patrons of the show, so if you support this podcast, you could sit in and you could be on the show with these guys. Without further ado, enjoy the very first No Ma'am Roundtable, another chapter of the Married with Children podcast.
Let's rock.
Thanks, Dad.
Can I get a whoopin'?
Whoa, No Ma'am presents, live from the Nudie Bar, the Married with Children podcast.
Hear ye, hear ye. The first official meeting of No Ma'am, Married with Children podcast is now called to order. I'm Brother Steven Scott, and I'm joined today by an illustrious band of podcast brothers.
This is Brother Luigi.
And this is Brother Tyler.
And what do you have to say about the Bundys today?
So today is our Valentine's Day special podcast. So welcome to the show. We are Alexless, Jamieless, and Danless.
And Jerryless.
And Jerryless.
We are married with childrenless right now. So it's just us.
We're Patreon members of the Married with Children podcast. We've been involved heavily. It's one of our favorite shows, one of our favorite podcasts.
That's right.
And
you could actually say, Stephen, that we are fanatics about Married with Children podcast. We are true fanatics. Fans.
Yes, we are.
Beyond fanatics. And actually, I would say all of us actually come to this with very different perspectives.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all started at different points in our lives. So I guess you get to hear all of our zaniness tonight.
Quick question. Since this podcast that we're talking about is called Married with Children podcast, anybody recording now actually married with children?
I am, believe it or not, I'm a widower.
Oh.
And I found it strange. It was 20 years ago. I was thinking just last weekend when my wife Robin died. She had cancer, but we didn't have any kids. So I'm kind of, sometimes I feel like I missed out. But the ironic thing was, when I was married to her, I could not watch Married with Children unless she was gone. She hated the show. She despised it. Of course, she loved Roseanne.
Steven, why? I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, so she could watch Roseanne, but I can't watch Married with Children.
That's very. She wants to watch dirtier people do dirtier things.
I guess so.
So, if I mentioned when I was on the podcast how sick and twisted I was watching the show as an 8-year-old. So, I actually was married with children, although I'm now divorced. And to emulate my hero, Val Bundy, I actually married a redhead, believe it or not.
You didn't tell her. You didn't tell her that on the first date, right?
No, I didn't. Although, when my friends first met her, as we were leaving, we were in this restaurant, and one of them yells out, like, "Go get her, Al." Afterwards, she's like, "Why did they call you Al?" Although I do have to point this out, Peg was actually a bottle red. She wasn't a natural redhead. I actually had a natural redhead.
Oh, wow.
So,
nice.
So
Full red.
That's the difference. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. My wife, Robin, she had red hair, but she was opposite. She liked to cook, clean, and all that stuff.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Well, she didn't like it, but she would do it,
So we have 2 reds out of 3. So, Tyler, what's your story?
Okay, well, I think I'm a little younger than you guys. I just turned 30, actually, last week. And I have actually never been married and have no children at the moment. So I'm kind of the one just looking at this as wow, is this what married life is like? And is this what my children are going to be like? Wow.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if I'm lucky.
Listen, actually, I have an 8 and a 6-year-old, and they stick their hands out. It's like, "Daddy, give me money. I want $1. I want $5."
So Al putting money just in that opening theme, it probably feels familiar to you. Just like, boom, money here, give it to the dog. Why not?
Absolutely. I mean, the other day I was like, I had a 20 in my wallet. And it's like, "Daddy, I want money. Give me $1." It's like, "I only have a 20. It's like, "Oh, I'll take a 20.
I'll take that. That's cool. Don't you worry, Dad. I'll make do." But what's really cool is that you guys have memories watching this when it was actually airing. This was a show that was not allowed to be on in my household. My mom hated it, and my dad didn't give a crap, so it was just never allowed to be seen. So actually, my very first introduction to Married with Children was that Futurama episode where they did the parody, and I'm like, what the hell is this? It's so specific. It's got to be something. And I looked it up, and it was like, Married with Children. What? And then I clicked it. I'm like, holy crap, it's Leela's voice. Whoa! And I watched all 11 seasons in 1 month.
1 month?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's some dedication.
I couldn't stop.
Dedication.
I had the entire box set. I couldn't stop.
Yeah. Even I would take a break every now and then because it's like, okay, enough Married with Children. I need something else in my life.
I get home from work, pop the DVD in, and let it play, and I'll play until I'm bored. Guess what? I never got bored. So
Yeah. No,
until you got to the top of the heap, right?
Oh, top of the heap. That was me falling asleep part right there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to bed. I don't know what this is.
No, I mean, I'll tell you for myself, watching it for 33 years from the Fox premiere all the way to the end.
Wow.
I don't think I barely missed an episode, and if I missed an episode, I would catch it in the summer reruns. But and then watching it in syndication, I mean, it's the only show I ever watched from beginning to end and followed, that religiously for that long a period of time.
I was big into it during the initial run. I missed the first season, but I remember I was in college and it was getting ready to start my junior year, and the roommates I had in my apartment, one of them's name was Jack, and he says, "You have got to watch this show." He had discovered it. And so my first episode was Poppy's Spice Treat.
Yeah.
The second season premiere. And I was hooked, and like I said, I watched it and, fell out of habit for a while. I explained that situation. But I would always try and catch up when Robin wasn't around, and she hasn't been around for a long time, so I was able to catch up. I share with this on Facebook is that after she died, I switched careers. I was a Methodist minister.
Oh,
and
really?
I was, believe it or not. And anyway, I struggled in trying to find a new career, and I was getting depressed. I was sending out resume after resume. I did I did work in emergency medical services before I was became a pastor, and I finally got a job working the truck. That's what we call it in paramedics and EMS.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you, that was just an awful time, and that's a job that just is such an emotional drain.
Oh, yeah,
see
definitely.
a lot of human misery, and it was at that time FX started to show the Married with Children episodes again. And that's when I became a true fan, because I saw Al, everything was going wrong, but he kept going on.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why I love this show, man. It's so great because you can enjoy it when you're successful, and it's actually a comfort when you're in a darker part of your life.
Yeah, because it is a dark show if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
I took a class when I was in college at OU. I took a class called Comedy in American Film, and it's ever since then I look at comedy in a different way. Comedy is usually awful in a way.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the Greeks had comedy and tragedy side by side. It's comedic tragic. And one of the scenes in Married with Children that I always come back, basically if someone says, hey, Married with Children, instantly an image pops up of Al sitting at the table with all the Bundys. It's baby meeting with his head in his hands. And they're like, okay, and now let's hear for the treasurer. And Al just gets up silently and pulls his empty pockets out and then sits back down, head back in his hands. That was me for the past 3 years.
It can be like that.
Yeah, and comedy is actually one of the things, I know that they've touched on in the podcast is how comedy is very personal to each of us. We all have a sense of humor, and we develop that sense of humor, through our lives. So, Alex, we always remind him how much, we love the Ferguson episode, and he doesn't like it, but it's because for us, we find aspects of that comedy humorous where other people don't necessarily, don't. So
I stayed with Alex on that one. I'm sorry.
You didn't like my history of toilet humor in America that I gave a little bit? Because that's a real thing. Like toilet flushing, going to the bathroom was such a huge thing. It's equivalent to showing nudity back for the longest time throughout film and stuff. People don't want to be reminded that people do that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And to have Al sitting on a toilet in the living room was just, destroyed all those ethics. I love it.
Yeah. For myself, being Italian American, you have the stereotypes that, we all know how to do housework, drywall, electrical, plumbing. I relate to that because I can't tell you how many bathrooms I've renovated through the years, from with my dad or with, my relatives. And, and the type of discussions you have, it's like, oh, look at that toilet. It's like, that toilet can really take a load.
And I could, nice. I saw what you just did.
Or you're renovating a bathroom that had pink tile from the 1950s. It's like, oh, God,
oh my God, I'm picturing you in a.
Yeah, it's like how the hell do you take a crap in a pink toilet? In a toilet that's pink. These are real conversations.
Squint until it's red.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? These are real conversations that people have, and that's why comedy is so personal to each of us. It's like, me, that's the image that I get, when I see the show. It's like, and I can relate to it because it's like, oh, I've heard this conversation outside of this show. That's what makes it funny, and they hit the comedy perfectly for me,
Absolutely. And the way they wrote the character, because in a way, the show in itself, it's a shallow show. It's a very shallow show, but the characters are so deep. There's such a deep sense of characterization. I feel like I could go shopping for Al Bundy better than I could for my own dad. I'm getting a lot of interference from somebody. It's like, you feeling that?
Is it from me?
I think it might be. Oh, there we go. It's gone.
Okay.
It's gone. Good.
Yeah.
What I did was I start up my other laptop here, Believe it. Yeah, I've got 2 right now.
Oh, look at you, Mr. Fancy.
I'm upgrading to this newer system.
Oh, he got his porn computer.
Yeah.
To do this
So
too.
the laptop I'm on now is going bye-bye probably next week.
Now you're going to close the 40 tabs of porn out, right? That's going to leave them up.
That's true. But anyway, I just wanted to pull up some stuff on IMDb. And the thing was, I wanted to start this as, something as a roundtable discussion on Married with Children. We could talk some about our favorite lines and character moments. And the theme, of course, is love and relationships in Married with Children.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, do those things really go together? And my first question out there is, think of the times when Al and Peg truly showed love for each other.
Anytime they're sitting on the couch laughing at their miserable lives. And I literally mean, like, we have no money. We're going to die soon. And they don't even care. And the laughter turns real. And I almost see the characters stopping their fake laughter and actually busting out really laughing because it's so ludicrous. Like,
yeah. Well, I think that was not too long ago. They were talking about where we're going to get the money, our retirement account.
That's it.
Yeah.
The kids' college fund.
Your retirement fund? Oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of, episodes, like, for example, like when they actually have money. So, for example, Master of the Possibilities. When Buck gets the credit card, it's like Al could have been.
I mean,
very
they
selfish.
had money in a way, I guess.
Right. But they had some money, and it's like, look, I mean, Al could have just gone to the Nudie Bar and and had a good time himself, but he didn't. Or remember when he won money at the track? That was the Father Load episode in season 2.
Very underrated episode.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Or eating out. When they went to the restaurant. It's like
the restaurant.
Like
I thought you were talking about him.
Or what about when they stole Bud's grant money? They just
that's right. Yeah.
The podcast.
Or Al's money in the cigar box buried.
That's right.
They got money all over the place.
Yes.
Right. But
I think
it's like he's not selfish. I mean, that's like, I think, like one of the ways you express love. I mean, if you're being selfish, you're only thinking about yourself. Now, Peggy has tendencies for thinking about herself, but even she has her moments within the show, right? It's not always, correct?
She is very awesome because she can do that, but not break character, because she has moments, but they're moments that we see that she's not meaning us to see, if that makes any kind of weird sense. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember, like, it was the first season when they have their 16th wedding anniversary. Remember, when she wants to say, I'm sorry. Remember, because that's at the end of the episode. Al wants to hear her say, I'm sorry. But she gets ready to say it, and then all of a sudden he cuts her off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's love.
And I think one of the ways that the family shows love is this idea that, no matter how terrible the members of the family household you live with might be, where the lines are. And I think it's perfect is when Al takes a vacation in his living room.
Yeah.
And if everybody goes along with the real words. Dad, wait, don't leave yet. Oh, damn it, I missed him. Like.
And if you notice in that one, I thought was interesting, Al actually gives Peg a kiss on the cheek before he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pretending to leave.
This is a fantasy that only works if everybody goes along with it. And only your family would.
Of course.
That's right.
And again, Bud has to tell him, Dad, this was cute when I was 4, but don't you think it's ridiculous now?
And what does Al say? He breaks it just once for the audience to understand. I might kill everybody here.
In alphabetical order.
And I've been there, starting with you, Bud.
I teach 9th graders, so I feel the same way a lot of the time.
Oh, wait, which one of you teaches 9th graders?
I teach 9th grade. I teach 9th grade science here in Tulsa.
Oh, dang! I'm almost got my degree to teach 9th grade history. Oh, wow! We should go on a killing spree.
Yeah, the toughest age to teach.
Oh, I know, but they need it.
Yeah. And one thing, I touched on a little bit on the England shows that I was on. The the type of humor is actually Married with Children is very British in terms of its humor style. Because American style humor, really didn't like follow this. I mean, and Stephen, you're probably much more well versed in the Norman Lear comedies. Like All in the Family, Sanford and Son, Good Times. I mean, they were all based on British comedies because everything before that was very like apple pie, Americana. Everything was great in the world, and the British had a very dark sense of humor. And what I found interesting about Married with Children was, the writers ended up writing for these Norman Lear comedies, and then this thing ended up getting exported to Britain and other countries around the world. But the style itself is very British. I mean,
yes, ironic, tragic, kind of weird ass scenarios that only rely on a group of like small amount of cast to perform it. Yeah, that's totally a British thing to do.
Yeah, and I do think British comedy is superior to American comedy.
I think it's been around longer, so they have more. It has more of like a well-built foundation.
Well, I find it more unpredictable. I mean, and I think Married with Children has moments like this where you could see a joke coming a mile away in a lot of TV shows, and Married with Children got more like that towards its latter years, I thought.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. What's your guys' favorite non-animated sitcom besides Married with Children?
Non-animated?
Yeah.
I always loved WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that was.
If you remember that old show.
I do. I love that.
That was excellent.
That was one of the funniest shows ever. It relied on characterization. It relied on situation and dialogue. I mean, you can't beat Les Nessman and Herb Tarlick as fodder for jokes, or Johnny Fever.
Yeah.
True. Mine was All in the Family, because Archie and Edith were literally my parents, yet not that funny. And I've seen it all the time. I've watched it with my parents. I watched it with my grandparents. I love it. And then I was blown away to discover that, like you guys said, it was based on a British show, Till Death Do We Part. And I watched that, and I'm like, holy crap, it's All in the Family with British people.
Right. Yeah. And ironically, so I grew up in Queens, New York, right? And where I grew up is literally where the bunkers were supposed to have lived.
Oh yeah.
So growing
up,
Hauser
Street on the south side of Queens, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, where the actual house is, the exterior shots is one section of Queens. It's actually in Glendale, Queens. They always said that they lived in Astoria, or Astoria, as he said, and it would be right off of Northern Boulevard, past Steinway Street, because the Archie Bunker's place takes place on Steinway Street. The shots are of this main strip, and it was a coffee shop. It was literally 2 blocks away from where I lived. So growing up, I actually, when I was, and I was born in this country, but my neighbors actually sounded like Archie and Edith. I mean, that's the sound. And as a child, I mean, that was the type of, that's what I sounded like. I mean, I would say my Queens accent has flattened out through the years, especially, once I got into college and, into business. But, if you get me on a good day, I sound like Archie.
I always like to tell.
But in answer to your question, Tyler, just to finish up, I would say like the Sanford and Son is probably like one of my, maybe like a second favorite, after Married with Children, just in the sheer comedy.
Okay, yeah, that's an A+1. I got the box set for that, so I totally agree. It's amazing.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys. So we're talking about love between Al and Peg. So we had 2 Valentine's Day episodes.
Okay.
Now, Stephen, if you remember this, did you participate in the call-in for the season 2 episode 17? Peggy Loves Al. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I might have missed that one when it first came on, and then caught it in the summer repeat.
Yeah.
But I do remember that one, and I thought I liked that episode because, that does show that, they do love each other.
When did that episode air?
I think
February.
that
Was Valentine's Day, 1988.
Yeah, that was the second.
I would have been born in 2 years, so no call from me.
I was 9 years old and I called in. Like I told you, this is how sick I am. So what it was there was a whole lead up. I'd say like the week leading up to the airing of the episode. It was like, well, call in. They have this whole promo. It's like, we want you to call in and, say, and have either Al say that he loves Peg or not. It was this whole thing. And they had this whole buildup. So when you cut to commercial, like these numbers flashed on the screen and you would call them. These are the days before internet polling, and, they would record them. So, and I was hell bent, and it's like I did not want Al to, say that he loved her. but the numbers.
Ew, she's a girl. Gross.
Yeah, she's got cooties.
The numbers came back. Some of the research online was like 67% voted in favor of Al saying "I love you."
Wow.
Believe it or not. But I'd say like that was my probably the first time I ever called in or did any type of participation on this.
I gotta say that also when Al and Peg show their love for each other, Jerry Herring and I had a discussion on this when I got to be with him one time, and it's when they see other people just as miserable or even more miserable than they are.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely.
I think one of the classic, demonstrations of that was in The Egg and I. Steve goes back, and the melee can see, and what are Al and Peg doing? They're just having the time of their lives, watching it through binoculars, Kelly was watching binoculars, but faced the wrong way or something. But, they were happy then, and then there was another scene in The Razor's Edge when they start arguing about the beard, and then all of a sudden Peg goes, "Oh, Al, they're getting ready to fight," and they started acting real giddy, So.
well, you remember in Tyler in the gas station show, like when Al goes under the hood of the family in the Jeep and he rips those cables out. It's like he has this glee on his face when he sees them.
About doing that today. I want to do that today.
They're all happy, and it's like, and he just gets joy when all of a sudden it's like now they're screaming at each other. Right? It's like drop dead, the lot of you.
This guy in a blue
which is something
Mustang.
Al said. Yeah. By the way, Al said the same thing to his family. Do you remember that in that same episode?
Yep.
Right.
But no, this guy in a blue Mustang today, literally an hour before I got this recording with you, almost hit me, and I went to the gas station. I saw him get out. I was trying to avoid him because I'm not a conflict guy. I don't like to fight. I try to avoid that kind of stuff. And I pass him in the gas station, and he bumps into me, and I'm like, "Oh, sorry." He's like, "Yeah, you better be. Watch where you're fucking going." And I'm like, "Okay." And I pass his car, and I just imagine doing exactly what Al did, just rip that thing right out and toss into the trash can and whistle away. I did.
What Al would do.
Yeah. I mean, you think it would have been like a wire on the distributor cap, but if he did that, the car wouldn't have been able to start.
No. Yeah. No, he did the movie thing of put your hand under the hood and rip something that looks like wires/tubes out, and that car is now gone for the movie.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, so then we have, the Valentine's Day Massacre, right? Episode.
Oh, God.
Now, we can't talk too much about it because they haven't covered it yet. But,
no.
What I thought, is great about that is, how Al's up there. And, he forgets about Valentine's Day, and he ends up in this place where it's like, oh, you have to give blood or sign over the deed to your house, to buy a dozen roses.
Back when you can actually sell your blood.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I remember my dad, I have two sisters, and my sisters would call my father on his beeper years ago, my older sister. And it would be It's like, you know what day today is? And he'd be like, isn't it Thursday? He's like, it's Valentine's Day. And he's like, oh, shit. Either he would have to remember to buy flowers on the way home, or he would say to her, it's like, go out and buy flowers. I'll give you the money later.
It makes me really wonder how many times a husband, and you guys, I have 2 ex-husbands here, maybe you guys can tell me, how many times have you guys ever did that where you're like, you know what, honey, let's not get gifts this year let's not do it, when secretly that's we got to surprise each other now, or one of us is going to look like an asshole.
I never did that, and remember, I'm just, I'm being a widower. That was the thing, we were still newlyweds. I mean, for 8 years we were married. So, and I've made a point to remember, I grew up watching, my dad was a doctor, and he treated his family like patients, even my mom. And numerous affairs, and I swore to myself I wasn't going to do that. I was going to appreciate my wife, and because things like that really have an impact on you when you're a kid. That type of stuff.
Totally.
And so, So I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I wanted to remember my wife, and I didn't want her to lose her identity either. Because when I was growing up, I thought, well, my mom wasn't Kay. That's her name, Kay. She was the doctor's wife.
Okay.
And when I was a minister, I realized, oh my God, I don't want Robin to refer to as the pastor's wife.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You see?
Yeah.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
That was just me.
Yeah. No, I can't say I never forgot anything. If anything, what's funny with me and my ex is that, I actually had the better memory than her. So nobody can ever pull one over on me on that. But, one thing I do want to say, Dan, during one of the podcasts, he made this great observation that, was really profound for me. So, he was talking about, Al and cheating, right? And the fact that Al never cheats. So one of the things he said was, if Al had ever cheated on Peg, so if we'd ever seen, for example, when he goes to Luke Ventura's apartment with the Cherry Sister, right? Or or
one of my favorite episodes,
or in the Nudie Bar and all that. We would have really, looked at him as a despicable character.
How sure were you that he was going to cheat in that episode? If any of you had happened to remember seeing it for the first time.
Well, I
didn't think he would.
Yeah, for myself, again, looking at it as an 8-year-old, I didn't necessarily understand it. But, do it, Al, do it. I think as time went on, you start to understand. It's why is he such a sympathetic character to us? It's because he slogs through, he goes through marriage. He does the right thing in his own way. He's not a saint, in terms of maybe the way he acts or the way, the way he speaks, but he does do the right thing. And, one of the stories they talk about is when the pilot was first put together, they brought the show in front of this guy who they called the professor. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this story. So he was a guy who was supposed to look at the comedy and just to see if it would work. And, at the end, he said, it's if you can prove that these people love each other, it's I think you have something special. And I think it was Ron Levite who stood up and he says, you know what's wrong? They looked at each other and he's like, and you know what's wrong with, television? Because in other words, saying it's all sitcoms have to show that they love each other. But the reality is that, and if that story is true, Levitt and Moy maybe at that point in time didn't understand that you did have to show love between them. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been such a dear show for us. Again, it's a dark version of love. Mm-hmm. It's a dark humor version of love, but it is still love between the two of them.
And I remember a great episode when they all went to the beach. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Flights to the beach. And he's right there, and that old friend of his, Marilyn, wanted to make love with him right here, right there. And he says, my wife is here. I don't care. The kids are here. Well, I'll send them away. And he finally tells her, well, I'm married and I have kids. I don't think you'd be right.
Right.
I thought that was,
but
that
wife
shows.
is right here. I don't care.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
You know, or if you look ahead, for example, to the episode of Vanna White, The Proposition, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was willing, you know, to sell himself to her for $500,000, you know, in order to give his family, you know, a nice life.
What did he put it as? Like a dream of every man, to be desired by a woman whose, like, what is it, like, whose waist size is shorter than the lifespan of the man.
Whose skirt is as short as the lifespan of the man who
she chooses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually that episode. Yeah, that episode wasn't the Vanna episode. That was with Terry Weigel.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
sharp dressed Al.
Exactly. Do you think I'm sexy? That's the episode.
Oh, do you think I'm sexy?
I'm sexy.
Okay.
Season 5, episode 9. Yep.
Is there an episode called Sharp Dressed Al? Oh, that sounds like a title, doesn't it?
No, but that's exactly the episode.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
I'm married with children.
Yeah, that's right. At the end, it's like, remember, like he was wearing the underwear in a tube,
silk
leopard
underwear.
prints, yeah. And all of a sudden, Peg looks, it's like it's Hanes, you know.
He's flossing, and I looked in his ears. What did you see? Nothing. He cleaned them out.
Oh man. Now but by the same token, you know, what about Peggy?
She's hot.
Yeah, she is.
I still don't know why. Like, it's strange. Like, she is playing a woman who is supposed to be. All these people are supposed to be repulsive in a certain way, but yet she's very, very attractive and intimidating in a very sly way, and I love how she does that.
Yeah, I was more getting at her faithfulness. Right. You know, she's always hinting at, I want to have a fling with this person, like with Rodrigo and or whatever his name was in Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And
Zorro.
Zorro.
Her hand down. You lost your ring down Zorro's pants. Like,
yeah.
Right.
And they have the Bundy rule there. I mean, I can understand that, but what I'm getting at is she's always like flirting with other guys. You are who I think of when I have sex with my husband.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think that's actually a commentary on the difference between sexual prowess within the genders, because like this is just me talking as a cis male gender here, but I see women don't have to like search and skulk out for a man the way men, for sex specifically, the way men have to for women. Basically, if she wanted to get some, she could get some. It's not a matter of could I, it's a matter of will I. And the one man who seems in this world who seems to keep turning her down in the most silly and hilarious ways that's the man she's going to keep coming after. And I think it shows like a balance of power in their marriage in a weird way.
Yeah. But you see, they both prescribe to the look but don't touch philosophy. I mean, and that's what they did throughout the entire run.
True.
Now Ed O'Neill, in one of the interviews, he said that when he played Al, you know, in this issue regarding having sex with Peg, you know, he said, you know, the thing he was trying to get across was the boredom, you know, of being in a long-term marriage. How, you know, as the years go by, it's sort of like the same thing over and over again, right? Now, you know, some people like, you know, to eat bologna every day, right? Some people like they like to mix it up. One day's chicken, one day beef, you know, one day fish. So, you know, so for both of them, you know,
sometimes all at the same night, like
right,
you know?
Right. But for both of them, the excitement that they got was, I think, the fantasy. You know, they had these fantasies playing in their head, and that's what they used to try to break it up. So, you know, remember, like, there's that episode when Peg, she goes out to, like, you know, the strip club. I think it was Troy's, right? Yeah. And when she comes back, it's like Al's asleep, and all of a sudden it's like she rapes him, and it's like he wakes up in the morning, he's got the cowboy hat on his face, you know.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Holy
shit.
Yeah.
And I was also, but how about the scene where Peggy's gone? I don't know where the hell she is, but Al's alone, and he's, oh wait, no, he's with Kelly. and Kelly's sick,
Yeah.
and he has that dream, the dream fantasy.
That's right.
And he dives in, and
Pamela Anderson.
And I think I know why he woke up then. It's not because Kelly woke him up. It's because you're right, Luigi. You're absolutely right. It's all about the fantasy. The second sex was about to happen in this fantasy, his brain just made it so it couldn't happen. They literally vanished.
You know, and that kind of goes on to a latter episode. I forget the exact title of it. I think it's in the 11th season when Peg is posing as an exotic dancer at the Jiggly Room.
That's right, yes.
Jasmine. And that gets Al excited, and he rushes home to have sex with Peg because Jasmine turned him on.
That's right.
Didn't he actually, recognize... Wasn't there one episode where he thinks, woo, look at this hot number over there. Nice. And then it turns out to be Peg. He's like, Peg, I thought you were somebody else.
Right. And Steven, for All in the Family. Well, actually, Tyler, you said you're a big All in the Family fan. There was an episode in the early seasons where Gloria Bunker wears this dark wig. Remember, she was blonde with curls. Yeah. And the meathead, that gets turned on by her, having a black wig on.
I saw that with my girlfriend when I was 15, and she was she looked over at me and was like, would you be interested in me differently if I put on a wig? And I was like, only one way to find out. And she smacked me in the face, rightfully, for saying that. But no,
if it was me, I probably would have said something like, which one of us is going to put on the wig?
Just you want to see Rob Reiner showing his acting skill when Gloria put that wig on her head and everyone's like, wow, you look beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting. And he's just staring like, holy shit, I can cheat on my wife with my wife. Yeah.
Right. Right. And but Steven, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened with that in the Jasmine episode. Right, because I mean that's where the whole thing got blown. But that's really the psychology. Like when you look at the love that they have, I mean, they still love each other through all these years. But but the thing is that there's they touch on it's the boredom of being in that long-term marriage. Being 15, 20, 25 years together.
I would hope to think that if Robin was still alive, that we would still be married because we got along so well.
Oh man, what are you thinking? Black wig or blonde wig?
No. No. Actually, if there'd be a wig, it'd be me having to wear it because I'm the bald one now.
AKA worst Valentine's Day gift ever.
Yeah.
A blonde wig? Really? Why? Put it on and you'll find out.
Yeah. And and for all that Peg, I mean, all that Peg rags on Al. Look at how jealous she is at times. For example, there's the episode where, he ain't much, but he's mine. Season 4.
Yeah.
And that's when, that blonde hussy's in the beauty parlor, and she's like, oh, it's like married men are great, as long as they're not, mine or something like that, right? And she thinks, and Peg thinks that Al's cheating on with her, right?
Oh yeah.
Or the do you think I'm sexy? That the other one we just described, or the Vanna
White. Al, really?
So, but I mean, because the thing is that there is always that element of jealousy, or remember in the episode where Dan Castellaneta is in, where he plays Pete.
Yes.
Remember, Pete's husband.
One of my favorites
is dancing with Peg.
Mm-hmm.
Like Peg.
Pete's husband. Oh wait, was that when Al started dancing with the gay guy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you remember he's
Homer Simpson. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. His husband. Remember, he's the guy who's in Christmas Vacation. He plays Clark's
buddy,
at work.
Co-worker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
His co-worker. But if you look at that scene, it's like Peg wants to be desired.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all she wants is to just have that rush of feeling desired by somebody else.
But Al wants to be appreciated.
But she doesn't want. She's not going to cross the line.
Yeah,
it's like, remember, when finally Al shows up, he's like, okay. It's like, okay, Al, go beat the hell out of him. Right? She wants the satisfaction of seeing Al, quote unquote, love her, in the way that she wants to be. She wants to feel the desire.
But you see,
I never thought about that.
But there's also a dichotomy there because in one of my favorites, hot off the grill, he has sex with her, 3 or 4 times in one day.
I think, okay, you know what? I honestly think that's one example of something Married with Children doesn't do too often, where they entered a weird Twilighty zone where it's just, they couldn't figure out any way to creatively do it. It goes against Peg's character. But it was so hilarious that I'm glad they did. Just we're going to flip it just this once for no flipping reason. And it was just perfect.
And I thought of another episode in which, what was her name in the Earth Angel? That girl.
Tiffany. Was it Tiffany? Was it Tiffany?
Tiffany, yes, Tiffany. Yes. And so Al wants to go upstairs with Peg, and she's shocked. And the next morning, she's rushing. Peg is rushing downstairs, stops Tiffany from leaving, says, "Stay."
Oh my God! That actually has one of my favorite. That episode has one of my favorite Steve lines. And shout out to Jerry here for good Steve lines. Is when they're looking at her fixing the fridge, and he's like,
"That's a different one."
That. Really?
Yeah.
Girls are easy.
Girls just want to have fun.
That's right.
Oh wait.
No, the Steve line in that one is, it's like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. And he goes, gobble-doo, me.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I don't know what episode this is, but it's basically Al and Steve are ogling at this woman's, really nice behind. Yep. And Steve goes, I used to see those before. I've seen one of those before.
Yeah.
It's so pathetic.
I saw one of those in college once.
Oh, that's it. I saw one of those in college. I
ran a marathon. He ran a marathon.
I didn't even know it.
And then Marcy references it later.
He ran miles. The pre-porn ages. It's just so sad.
Like Rodney Dangerfield had a good joke. He goes like this. He says, it's like, it sucks. It's like when you follow, a nice ass and it turns out to be a guy.
I got to tell you this one. This is one of my favorite jokes. I don't know if it originated with Robin Williams or Groucho Marx, but it goes like this. God gave man a brain. God gave man a penis. What God failed to provide was an adequate blood supply to run both properly at the same time.
That's a Robin Williams line.
Yeah, and
that's from Death to Smoochie.
Yeah, but I think Groucho Marx might have originated it.
And Peg had a variation on that. If you
recall,
she said, it's like
Edge.
That's right. It's like, blood needs to leave the brain. It's like, it's
he doesn't know what to do.
It's willing to enter into negotiations.
The brain just doesn't know what the hell happened.
The brain wants that blood back, is what she says.
Hey, guys, I just got questions. A different little train of topic here. So the children in Married with Children. I find it interesting, the relationship that Al and Peggy have between their two children. I specifically like when Al is creepily grooming Bud to be as disgusting as he is.
Yeah.
And same with Peggy doing it. Oh, anytime Peggy and Kelly are sitting on the couch, bobbling their legs together at the same time, it's just adorable. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? The way they treat their children differently, depending on when they're trying to, pass on their traits.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is, and I feel bad for the Bud character because he never really gets nurturing love. I mean, obviously, he shares his moments with Dad, but not much with Mom. There's not a lot of nurturing. I mean. Al loves Kelly. I mean, it's still his pumpkin. So, I mean, throughout the course of the show, he'll do things.
He's protective more than nurturing.
Right. Protective of his daughter. But not necessarily of his son. So, and actually, if you think about it, that's the reason why he grows up to be so warped.
Oh, yeah.
This character grows up to be, as warped as he is.
Actually, if you really look at it after, before puberty, typically, from what I learned in my family dynamics classes, and I found this to be true in seeing in family relationships, is that before puberty, the same-sex relationship, like father-son, is a lot more important. After puberty, that switches.
Ah.
Yes, and after puberty, the men's relationship with their daughter becomes a lot more important, and a woman's relationship with her son becomes a lot more important as well. I really think that it's Peg kind of warped him, and Bud did have a line to that. Remember when they caught him talking to the mannequin in that one episode what I did for Bud?
Oh, boy.
Bud says,
when they go shopping for the lingerie.
Distastefully at him, and Bud's response was like, you two having you two as parents didn't cause this.
Right.
But I love how they insult Peg, but how Al can insult Bud and demean his, like, I'm going to call it his, like, weird teenage perviness, but then at the same time flip it and say, you know what, I like it. Like one of the most recent ones I just listened to yesterday, it's 7, and then there's 7. When Kelly puts up that Foxy, the sexy puppy thing.
Wags,
and Al's like, I want sexy puppy on my wallet. It's weird for you to like it, Bud, but I'm already dead inside, so let me have it.
And I know it's a couple of years off, but remember when Bud was dial B for Virgin on the Virgin hotline? At the end, which is one of my all-time favorites. But at the end, that girl he was trying to help. His mother's there, and she says, if there was a service like yours when I was your age, I would have known who her father was. Bud says, well, knowing who your father is isn't all what it's cracked up to be.
Wasn't like Al like digging his pinky in his ear at that right in the middle of that or something like that? Like Al was doing something disgusting that Bud couldn't see or something like that just emphasized a little bit more.
I don't think so, because Al was with Peg during that episode. Yeah. Oh, there's another time when they showed love, when they got to watch Butch Cassidy and the
Sundance Kid. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's also a few years off.
Yeah. And I love that anytime a married couple or anybody in a long-term relationship, anybody bonds over liking a specific type of film or movie or something like that. I don't know. There's just something very sweet and surreal about that.
And that's why The Princess Bride is so popular. That's what Robin and I love to watch.
Oh, that's good.
We love to watch that one and Overboard. Another
Overboard.
Good romantic comedy. The original Overboard, not that crappy, shitty piece that they remade a couple of years ago.
Oh, honey, thank you so much for this marriage. I love you so much. Let's put on Overboard.
So let me throw this question out. So they're not big on saying I love you, right? But love takes on different forms, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be. There's this one famous book. It's called The 5 Love Languages, and it talks about different ways of expressing love. Like one is like touch, one is like acts of service, etc. So like I'm thinking so in the early episodes, like when at the 16th wedding anniversary, it's like Al takes the radio out of his car and puts it into Peg's car, to express love, without having to say I love you. So what are other examples of that?
There's one. It's I forget what it's called, but it's when Al and Peg celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. He actually has a gift for her. He put it in the backyard and buried it. And unfortunately, I think Buck dug it up or something like that.
Yeah.
So
and I actually, Stephen, it's funny you mentioned that episode. I have a very funny story about that. My parents on their 25th wedding anniversary, we were going out to a restaurant, and Married with Children was on reruns, and I was watching it, and this was in 1998. I can tell you exactly when, because it was exactly their wedding anniversary. That episode aired that night.
Wow.
My dad, who never really wanted to watch it, and I gotta say, in watching Married with Children for myself as a kid, it was personal for me. It's like I didn't want to have other commentary or anyone watching it potentially have it turned off. So
I don't want to think about my dad not wanting to have sex with my mom and stuff like that.
So here I am. I'm in college at this point in time. And, I was like, oh, my God, it's like, this is the episode. It's like, I remember I called my dad into the room. It's like, you need to watch this, Dad. And it had this look of disgust and disdain on him because he knew how crazy I was, having to watch the show. And he was literally rolling on the floor, laughing his ass off. By the time we got to the end of that episode, because I think it was probably the one time he and I got to bond over this, because he sort of looked at me and he's like, this is true.
You were asking God, that was great. Thank you for that story. Oh my God. You mentioned characters showing their love without actually saying it. One of my favorites is one I just watched 2 days ago, I think. Tramp, T-R-A-M-P, Tramp, or something like that. Oh. And Kelly's forced to walk home, and Bud's walking home. And I love this because I had totally forgotten that Bud in that episode was off getting some. And when he learns that this guy his piece of crap is talking about his sister, he's like, huh, okay. And it's just such a boss move, reaching over, hugging him. He's like, and I'm with the measles and I'm really infectious. That's from Kelly, and just smacks him on the face and walks away. I love that. That's a form of love right there. He didn't even think about it.
Or in What Goes Around Comes Around, when Kelly comes to Bud's defense, don't mess with the Bundy, and she, beats up Heather McCoy, Tiffany Amberson,
Right.
beats her up, but sets her up for a big humiliating experience.
Oh, the towel. Oh, I wish.
Yeah. And that's it. They bicker back and forth, but they do stick together.
Right.
I can give my brother crap, but if you even try, I'm getting you back for that harder. So,
I'll give you another example. What about when Al gets a second job at Burger Trek?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he's got a lousy job as a shoe salesman, making minimum wage, and he actually, he goes and works the night shift, making burgers.
He probably made more doing that than he did selling shoes.
Probably.
I can't get the image of him shoveling that stuff into the freaking pot. Oh boy.
They all show their love for each other, although it's very tenuous at some times.
True. And by the way, I didn't realize what time it was. At 8:30, I'm gonna have to actually sign out. So
that's fine. Yeah, I was thinking we probably need to end it here in about another 20 minutes anyway.
Did you guys think have they already recorded the episode where Al brings Bud to the Nudie? They have. That was
they have. That was my first time I get.
Steve was the guest on that one. Yeah.
Okay, that's why I was remembering it. Okay, yeah. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and it's been a long time. So, when Al brings Bud to the Nudie Bar, that is one of the. I would not personally set one foot into a strip club with my dad. Ever in a million years. Not now, not back when I was 17 at all. But I understand the idea that they were trying to show this is how Al is showing bonding and affection for his son by trying to bring him into his world. It's exactly like when my dad brought me out on this baseball thing that he goes out with his friends, and he wanted me to come along on my 30th birthday. And I was overjoyed. We were looking at nudie girls, but I was sharing a part of his life that I normally was not allowed to be a part of.
Yeah, that was a kind of a rite. I think I mentioned this on that podcast about
that's right.
My rite of passage was going hunting with my dad. One of the few fond memories I had with him, I'm sorry to say, but, and it wasn't the fact that I was hunting. I didn't enjoy it that much. I just thought it was cool to be out with my dad, my grandfather, my uncles, and my cousin, and I had a gun in my hand, and we were looking for deer to shoot.
And you're just thinking in your head, okay, man, be cool, be cool, be cool.
Exactly. Be cool, be cool. Yeah. And boy, was it cold. I didn't have It was so cold at first.
Dad, why do you do this stupid shit?
Yeah. One of my, just a sidebar. You ever, I'm sure you guys have watched The Simpsons and actually saw this one just the other day.
Why couldn't we just stayed at the bar and shot some rats?
No, it was.
Sorry.
Homer was worried that Bart was going to be gay because Marge made a gay friend.
Yep.
So
I was quoting that episode.
Yeah. They all suggested that, to make Bart a man, take him out hunting. And so they're taking him out hunting. You ever been hunting before, Bart? He says, no. A bunch of guys out in the woods alone. Seems kind of gay to me.
They're all just silent. No, I was quoting them sitting around the campfire, and he's like, man, we should have just stayed at the bar and shot some rats. Hey,
okay,
them ain't your rats, Barney. Thank you. I loved that. Oh, that was actually my first episode in television where I got to have a conversation with my parents about homosexuality and being gay, where that was actually a topic. I was like 12 when I watched that episode. And I didn't get a lot of the jokes at all. When Bart's being put in front of that billboard with those hot girls smoking, like, well, how do you feel? I don't know. Kind of want a cigarette. Great, I'll get you a pack. What's your taste? Anything slim.
Yeah.
I didn't get that at all. My mom had to explain that. She's like, it's a female cigarette. I'm like, isn't he worried about him being gay? Why is he worried about him picking up a woman's cigarette? Oh. Interesting. Oh boy, that was great. Yeah, but yeah, the whole bonding thing. I hope that's not what your dad was thinking.
No.
Gotta get this boy out there and get him right.
No. I don't bat left-handed. That's how I usually call it.
You catch with both hands, no? Right?
And do something else with both hands too.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I mean, like for myself, I'd say like, rite of passage. I know we got a little off topic. It would be like, Italian American culture, like making wine. We'd make prosciutto. You take a leg of a pig and salt it.
Damn. Did you ever make grappa with your family?
Northern Italians do. Actually, my godfather makes grappa.
I had it once and never having it again.
Yeah, it's a little harsh, but I remember
I puked right on the dinner table.
Oh, yeah. For me, it would have been making wine. I mean, I remember making wine as young as 4. And it would be annual ritual. We'd do it like in October, right around Columbus Day, and you'd be drinking it. It's not a lot. But again, in culture, in culture, I was born into. I mean, it's pretty common. We don't really. I mean, you drink wine with a meal, and with bread and cheese and sausages and stuff like that. So, it's not. I mean, I'm not drinking, a gallon of it, but maybe you have a glass as part of it, and you're tasting last year's wine. You're tasting, what you're making this year, and I'd say that was like a rite of passage for me.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? You're right. There is a lot of that. That's one of the things that makes Married with Children so good, because every once in a while they pepper it out with these you're talking about Italian. I'm talking about maybe like Southern American, and you're I think Stephen, you mentioned Queens, so the New Yorker side. They're doing just pure Bundy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also look at it too. I'm from the Oklahoma, Texas region, which is.
I'm from Queens.
I'm sorry. Wait.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'm not. Yeah, I visited New York.
You guys sound slightly similar. This is the first time I'm hearing your voices, so it's hard for me to pick them out every now and then. And my Skype just shows all three of you on at once. So let me talk.
Well, you see, the thing is, I grew up with one foot in Tulsa, which is a decent urban area. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in my mom's parents, my grandparents, both of them are gone, were from Stillwell, a little rural town. So, during the weekends a lot, I'd be going up there with my brother and my cousins. So I kind of grew up in both, but I never really got that southern accent that you get from a lot of, real hard Okies that like my grandparents had.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice. Just a small little bit of twang in there.
Yeah, just a little bit. But, it just depends on where you grow up, what that rite of passage is and what that language or love language is.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, and speaking of love, so, I mean, one of the other examples, we're talking about, how they expressed their love. I mean, what about when Al drove to go get Peg a bra?
Oh, yes. That's the one I was trying to remember.
Francine's of Hollywood, right? I mean, and that was very controversial. That's what started the whole Ricola. Yeah. I mean, that's what started the whole Ricola boycott.
That's what really put the series on the map, too.
Yeah.
I was talking to my boss's mother, and she's like 72 or something, and she overheard me talking about Married with Children. She goes, is that the show where that man was wearing those pants with no backside in it? And I'm like, oh, yeah, the episode where they're in the sex shop. She goes, I love that show.
See, you never know. There are some people that love that type of stuff. I had a great aunt Hattie, and she was my grandfather's aunt. And she lived, I think she died around 91 or 92, and she was 92. But she was the type of person who would have loved Married with Children.
Wait, you said she was your aunt? Your aunt Hattie?
My great aunt.
Please tell me she had a sister named Selma.
No,
No,
her name was Hattie.
Oh, Hattie.
Yeah.
With an H. Damn it. Oh, I got to stop showing how much of a Simpsons nerd I can be.
Sorry, all right. No, I got it the first time.
Yeah. No, her name was Hattie. And like I said, she would have loved Married with Children. I don't know if she ever watched it. That was something you just don't talk about with your great aunt. You would think, okay, probably not with her. And I remember I forgot who it was. I think it was my cousin. He said, oh, she would have loved it. She would have loved it. She liked body talk, and she'd get those old dime store novels.
Yeah. What I will tell you is that, my grandmother loved professional wrestling. She would
fucking awesome.
She would pray the rosary at noon, and at 4 or 5 o'clock she put SmackDown on.
Oh, I thought you were saying she would take the rosaries out while she was watching. Please let the Iron Sheik beat him.
Sometimes she'd be holding on to them. But she'd be yelling at the thing she didn't understand a word that they were saying, and God forbid you told her it was fake.
Mm-hmm.
God, I want your great aunt and his aunt Hattie to have a movie marathon together. That would be great.
Yeah, and that was something else. Alex and company did do the Skeleton Crew too. And the thing is, my wife also hated horror movies. I convinced her to go to one, Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Oh God!
And after that, she says she made a rule: if you want to see a horror movie, you go by yourself.
Oh God!
And I thought, and it was about 10 years ago. I have dated around some, and I had this really long relationship with a girl named Steffi. She loved horror movies. She loved action movies. She thought Married with Children was funny. I'm thinking, my God, this is too perfect.
Where's the ring?
Yeah, but that didn't work out in the end.
Oh, did you find out she secretly loved Big Chill? The movie that would make me break up with her.
She said she wasn't interested in getting married. She was just interested in going out and having a good time. Yeah, I was looking for marriage. Yeah, because at that time, I was only 41 at the time. And I was still thinking I'd like to have some kids. And now that I'm I'll be 53 in about 6 weeks. I had the same birthday, March 10th, as Chuck Norris. And Chuck Norris, I hope he's okay with that.
Awesome.
Well, I just hope they're going to beat me up after that. But the thing
you just have to go on social media and say, happy birthday, Chuck. Just let you know it's my birthday, too. Then you're fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm kind of like, I have 2 nieces and I have a nephew. Mm-hmm. And I've become really close with them. And my niece, one of my nieces, my lousy stepbrother was a lot like my father. He doesn't have anything to do with her. He thinks his first marriage was a mistake, so he doesn't have to have a relationship with her.
Wow.
So I poured a lot into that, and I'm like, I don't call her Pumpkin, but I consider her the closest thing I have to a daughter.
Oh, you should see if she might. You should see if she wouldn't mind the pumpkin thing. See if she wouldn't mind trying that out.
I'll try that. Yeah, she just got her driver's license, and I helped teach her.
Yeah, just say like,
also
great
a part-time
job,
driving instructor. Yeah.
Well, the one thing. Well, that's the one thing you got to say is that love manifests itself in many different ways. I mean, it doesn't have to be your blood. I mean, if we take, for example, 7, right? So we're in the middle of season 7.
I'm sorry.
You don't like 7, I know, right?
No, nobody likes 7.
Look at Peg. And actually, I just want to make a brief comment about 7. I feel like, poor kid got a lot of, gets a lot of the bad rap on this, and really, it wasn't his fault.
It's totally not his fault.
This is the fault of the executive who thought of the idea, and then the writers who effectively didn't give him anything.
It's the only fact that he is on a show with actors that have such incredible chemistry and almost perfect improv timing that he doesn't add anything, but he doesn't take anything away. In my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm saying besides the opening of season 7, right? The opening episode. Mm-hmm. Then they have him in the park, which is the 3rd episode, and after that, I mean, they gave him absolutely no screen time. Yeah, I mean, they give him a line. They give him 1 or 2 lines, and it's like it's not the kid's fault. Now, I mean, the thing is that if you went back in time to 1992, and maybe if they had made some scripts that were funny, utilizing the kid, maybe we would have a different opinion of it. You know what I mean? It's like you can't always blame the actor or the actress.
Oh no, I never did blame him. The thing for one is, I think you're right. I don't think Moy and Levitt even had the idea. I think it came from Fox or somebody like that.
I know this was an executive producer decision, like top up.
Yeah, and I saw last night. You remember? I'm sure maybe you guys are Star Wars fans.
Oh yeah.
Remember the Phantom Menace with young Jake Lloyd? And I found out that he
does look exactly like 7. No wonder. I was like, why does he look so
I wasn't
familiar?
making that connection, but, Jake Lloyd took a lot of crap from Star Wars fanboys. But I don't blame him for that awful performance. I blame George Lucas because he doesn't know how to direct. He doesn't know how to write dialogue.
What about Hayden Christensen? You blame him? I blame him.
He's easy to blame.
But I'm saying, but going back to love, I mean, look at the way like Peg expressed love to. I mean, just going to your story, Stephen. Look at the way Peg expressed love to this child that didn't belong to her.
At least for the first 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, it almost seems like she's doing it specifically to rub the faces of her own children in, which any other show it would never work, but this one does.
I think it's probably more like she feels like, well, she knows she's screwed up with those 2.
Right.
She knows they're
screwed up.
Yeah. And so she's like, I'm going to make this one good. I'm going to make this one perfect.
Oh, God, you're right. Do you guys ever see the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin?
Yeah,
love that movie.
Sure.
Love it.
When Rick Moranis' character is just like, forget about your 2 loser children. Focus on the youngest, because that's the only one. The others are too old. They're too, she's already in kindergarten. She's lost. Like...
Yeah.
Focus on the little one who keeps ramming his head into things. Like,
Now, I mean, I know we're getting close to wrapping this up. So I have like there's one series of episodes we haven't touched on, and they're not my personal favorites because they're in season 11. Toward the end, and
my favorite season.
And actually, the topic itself was very sad for me. So it's like some of those episodes that I'm not as familiar with because I don't rewatch them very often. So it's a 3-part episode. Breaking up is easy to do. So this is when Al and Peg separate.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, again, we can't give up too much, because otherwise Alex will get mad at us.
Well,
what's your thought on the whole premise? I mean, obviously they got back together at the end, but who
wants to go first?
Well, actually, because I remember watching this not too long ago. Because I've never seen all 3 of them consecutively back to back from beginning to the end. And, I thought it was, overall as a trilogy, it worked pretty well. Maybe individual episodes, not so much. But I thought it showed that, Al pretends like he doesn't care. But I think it shows that deep down he really does. And I think the same is true with Peg. And I think it might have been a marriage thing. They were just caught in this rut. A fat woman came in the shoe store today. Oh, thanks, Al. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Try and have sex with me, Al. Why should I? I already had sex with you 2 times, and look what we came up with.
Right.
I'm not a machine. Come on.
Yeah. So, I do like that. And overall I liked them for that particular reason. Is that yes, they were made for each other. They're for each other.
Okay.
Faults and everything.
I agree with what you're saying. Like if you put them all together and see it as one whole thing, it works. But individually, it doesn't. I have a different perspective on season 11. It's actually one of my favorite seasons because I had hindsight to know that it was the last season. And remember, I binged the entire thing for the very first time all at once. So I saw the ending coming. I saw it coming to an end, and I brace yourself. Here it goes. And I think it was when Amanda Beer said it on the Patreon exclusive podcast when they had the interview that Al was written to be like a Looney Tunes character. That's when this show kind of was like, you know what? F it. We are going to be a cartoon show. And in a way, it worked. I kind of like the ridiculous, crazy crap. Kelly as the Verminator, Bud going into like dimensional alter egos and stuff. Al completely losing his mind sometimes, and Peggy doing things that were completely on her. I kind of liked that. It was like, we're going to do whatever we want to do. And breaking up is easy to do is probably the 3 where they kind of went back to their formula and actually looking at what they were doing from a is this really what Al would do? Is how would Peggy deal with this kind of decision? I felt like they were trying really hard to go out on a bang, give the fans kind of a glimpse of what it once was before they went back doing crazy stuff.
I mean, the way that they ended it. I mean, although believe it or not, what we think is the last episode,
it's not.
It's not the last episode.
I was like, no way. I went online. I was like, I must have forgotten an episode somewhere. There's no way it's the last episode. It just ends.
Yeah, and really what you have to do is you have to look at the production codes, because when they film episodes, they film them in a certain order, and then sometimes they decide to change that order. And that was the case. And I don't know exactly the reason why they didn't air the last episode before the one we think is the last, which is, the Kelly's wedding. But, Al has a speech at the end, which is, I think, very telling, because he was talking to the tots and he says, you have no respect for the tortuous sanctity of marriage. It's like, and he says, but we believe, but he said, we believe marriage should be forever, right? No matter how pitiful and disgusting it may be to wake up to the same, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
guys,
and
that would have been the more fitting final episode. Right. Yeah.
Can I just say a slight tangent right there? The Weenie Tots are up there with Apple cigarettes from Quentin Tarantino's movies and Slushos from the Cloverfield movies as one of my favorite inside fake brands ever. I love Weenie Tots. The shit is something, all the chicken bones and weird bits.
No, well, that's what I call pigs in the blanket. Like when I go to the supermarket and I see the pigs in the blanket in the freezer section, I call them Weenie Tots,
Because you're just thinking,
and everybody knows that too.
They just want you to think of tater tots. That's all they want you to think of, but it's so hilarious.
Right. But the thing is, but if you ask anyone, I mean, if you say a Weenie Tot, they know exactly what it is. It's a pig in a blanket,
Wait. What happens to Weenie Tots when they're exposed to air? They disintegrate or something?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I mean, well, you get ptomaine poisoning, I know, if you eat too many of them.
don't you have to cook them? You don't have to cook them. You just got to open them up and eat them. Oh, God. Oh, God. But, yeah, but the breaking up is easy to do is just it allows you to remember all the craziness and just all the stuff that happened throughout it. I don't know. I found myself remembering a lot of the older seasons watching those separate parts.
Yeah. And like you said, that speech he makes in I forgot what the final two or the wedding episodes were called.
It's called How to Marry a Moron.
Oh yeah. I think that would have made a much better final. Of course, they didn't know there was going to be a final episode.
No,
right.
They thought they were going to have another season. It was canceled.
And I've been biting my cheek, trying really hard not to do research and to find out why it ended the way it did, because Alex and his crew will do a way better job than we can. So
yeah, they will. From what one of the things I understood was that it was very expensive for syndication.
Jesus, 11 seasons. Mm-hmm. The show that The Simpsons may have held it together way longer. Married with Children made Fox.
Yes, it did.
And they owed that show better. They owed that show better.
A lot better, yeah.
I think it was fortuitous to them that the fact that they were able to do that, because sort of the How to Marry a Moron, that 2-part episode, it was called The Desperate Half Hour, and then How to Marry a Moron. I mean, it was a good way of ending it, and that's the reason why they packaged it that way. They had that big thing at the end, it's like, thank you for 10 years, 11 seasons, and a million laughs, But I mean, then they had the final episode, which I thought was pretty interesting, having the monkeys at the end, because it was almost like it's a show of monkey business, which was a callback to another previous episode.
Do you guys remember?
And then I had to wait 5 years for I'll See You in Court to debut on TV.
Yeah.
Wait. Hold on a second. So you guys, when you saw that wedding episode on TV, that wasn't the last newest episode you would have seen of Married with Children then?
No, it wasn't, because you see what happened.
God, that's weird.
The networks, they packaged it as if it was the last episode. And then what happened was the following week, it was either a week later or 2 weeks later, because it was then Memorial Day weekend. Then they did that last one. It was with Alan Griff and the shoe store.
Chicago Shoe Exchange, I think.
That's it. Yeah, with the monkeys at the end.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite characters.
And that was new. And, I remember watching it, because it's like, again, I watched this thing religiously on Sundays for, 10 years. So here I am. I was in college. I remember I was finishing up my freshman year of college, and I'm like, okay, let me put it on. I figured, they'd start summer reruns. I'm like, wait, I didn't see this one. I watched the end of it, and then as years went on, you start to look at some of the stuff that you find online that tells you the history of this thing. It's like, no, that was the last episode. It's like, okay, and then it was a big deal, on FX when the I'll See You in Court aired.
Yeah,
and that was and that was a big deal, which was also edited, by the way. On TV, they don't actually play the entire. They don't play it exactly, what should have aired, the full cut. I think you can only get that on DVD, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm trying hard not to think about that episode because it makes me laugh too much.
Yeah, because again, it's about the censorship. I mean, they the network censors at the time. I mean, you look at it today, and that was the point I made. If you listen to me, like I guess it was on England 3, if you started watching the show in the last few years, like Tyler, you're part of that group, it's like you've seen dark humor comedy that has come out in the last 20, 30 years, right? The new stuff, but when you watch this in its first run, nobody else was doing anything like this.
And a lot of those jokes were very risque and body,
I completely get it. I just didn't know about that courtroom thing. And
I didn't know about that either. Yeah.
And did you guys know when the wedding episode came out that so they didn't advertise that as the series finale of Married with Children?
No, they did. They did.
Not
They
the
did.
series
Damn,
finale. I
man.
thought that was the season finale, right?
No. It was advertised as the series finale. Because what happened was, it's like, they told the cast, because the cast stopped filming. I guess it was in April, and the cast found out after they finished filming all the episodes, and then it takes another month or 6 weeks in order for all of the episodes to finish, to air.
See, that's
so
terrible.
that's what happened.
That's terrible. Like,
So they got to the end, and then it's like, okay, now the show's canceled. Like, maybe they found out a week after
the emotional
final taping.
Could you imagine if we had lived in a world where they're like, okay, guys, the wedding episode, we're just letting you know, it's not the last one you guys are going to film, but this is the last one that anyone is ever going to see. We're just letting you guys know. Could you imagine the difference performances that the actors would have done? And I think I see why they decided not to tell them, because they wanted to get the best performances. But I think Al, Peggy, Bud, and Kelly, they would have been able to give us something more. Just, I don't know, like it didn't feel like a series finale at all, and I was I kept waiting for more to happen, and it didn't. And I don't know, I felt like I was cheated. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like also, I heard Ed O'Neill found out from somebody else when he was on a break, a couple, like 6 weeks later. The network didn't even tell the executive producers, or they didn't tell the cast. So,
hey
of course,
guys,
this is probably
thank you for making us a network. Bye.
Yeah, but that's showbiz.
Thank God cable cutting is happening, and we can go towards like things like Netflix and Hulu that actually somewhat care about the content they're producing. You know what I mean?
And they can put out stuff that's dark, realistic, or scary, or whatever.
Like, I don't know if you guys have been checking it out. You guys ever heard of the show BoJack Horseman?
Not yet. No.
It's a Netflix original.
Wait a minute. Is that animated?
It is animated.
Okay, I know what you're talking about, but I haven't watched it.
It's insanely good. I work with high school students, and they tell me all the time, like, man, BoJack, this is insane. Like, they recognize it's not written for teenagers, but they freaking love it. It deals with depression. It deals with, insecurities and things that adults have to deal with on a daily basis. But they release the episodes like every 6 months. You get a batch of 10 episodes that tell one long line themed story, and then you got to wait another, year to see the next story they want to tell through this medium.
Yeah, but what I'll say is that, it's really hard. It's hard for them to make television today.
Yeah.
Like the way it was done in the past. Because, in the past, before cable, you had to hit a wide audience. I mean, and Married with Children was still in that era. I mean, today now it's like you have so many different options. It's like, if horror is your thing, like, for example, I'm not a horror fan, but I mean, you can have a horror cable station. You can make a show like it's very specific.
Oh yeah, horror fans will watch
like
really
vampire this and like vampire.
I admit we do.
We really do. I will give a horror movie a lot of props.
Yeah, but you're hitting such a small audience. Like, I'm talking numbers wise.
Oh,
it's not like saying. I mean, years ago, like when you said, it's like, oh, you're on NBC and you have an 8 o'clock, a Friday night slot, or whatever. Like, I mean, that was big deal. And you had, but you had, I mean, you had millions upon millions of viewers, that you can rely on. Now it's like the numbers, like any type of show that's on any network, because it's so fragmented, you can't make something that covers a wide audience.
No.
And something like this, or, we talked about like All in the Family, or, Sanford and Son. We mentioned like these shows. I mean, they had huge audiences because of the nature of the way media was at that point in time. And there will never be a time like that ever again. Because of all the options that are out there.
Yeah. If you notice, shows in the 60s and 70s typically lasted longer. 7 or 8 seasons was almost average for a hit show.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
11 seasons is unheard of, for most.
And nowadays, they're lucky to last 5 if it's a hit show.
Right.
Because
And
I'd say 3 is average.
And they're considered successful.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, when you guys mentioned that viewer thing, I love that podcasts nowadays that do television reviews remind younger people, and when I say younger, I mean 20s, younger than me, about how different it is. Game of Thrones series finale, probably we probably can all agree, probably one of the biggest talked about shows that came out in the past 5 years. Got 10 years, got 7.5 million views on that airing. As opposed to Peggy Made a Little Lamb, that had 28 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you
you said, it's so fragmented. I will say one thing. I do think television has gotten better because all the good writers went to television. They've gotten out of movies, which is obvious.
Yeah.
Because, TV has a lot more original ideas than Hollywood any day.
It's hard to get money. Like, hey, can you guys raise $200 million for this movie? Or can we raise $500,000 to make this stupid television show?
Well, and that goes to show you why, everyone's recycling scripts now. I mean, the last 10 years, it's like every single movie that made money 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they just keep recycling the script and, casting it with new actors.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little originality. And the thing is that, it shouldn't be that way.
No.
Make Psycho Dad. Everyone will watch it.
Right.
I don't
know if you guys saw that, but E.E. Bell joined the Facebook group page this week.
I did.
So we have Bob Rooney.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully,
how you doing, Bob? Shout out to you.
Hopefully, he'll be on the podcast or maybe join us in the Married with Children podcast No Man chapter.
Yeah, let's do it.
Who knows?
Killed his wife by 21, Psycho Dad.
Hey, I think we need to sign off here. Maybe we ought to just say,
let's do it.
Yeah. But real quick, I want to say, because I'm sure Alex will probably help with editing on this, but I just want to say this is, we were talking about love, relationships. This was a TV show we loved, and I was so happy when I found this podcast. I cannot tell you.
Same.
And it's just so much fun, and these guys do it great. So we want to express our gratitude to Alex and Jamie and even Dan.
And JP too. He would have to begin.
Justin. Yeah. I thought it was Justin.
I just
and
remember
of course Jerry.
That's right.
Jerry
of course Jerry, our Steve fanatic.
Hey, I'm a Steve fanatic too. I'm with Jerry all the way.
We gotta Steve this up right now. Oh, the poor turtle! No.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So,
I share the sentiment, Stephen. I mean, for me, it's been great. I mean, I've been this, married with children, not 33 years and counting. I love the dialogue. I think and as I've met people, it's now I help. I do some of the research. I'm part of the research team. So, my concentration is on the dialogue because that's what I like. But, then, you meet somebody like Annabelle. Annabelle loves,
Annabelle's incredible.
She loves the scenery changing. She pays attention to, what they're wearing and stuff. So, what I say is, I'm getting, a real 360-degree view of the show. It's I've always been a fan. But now, meeting people like you guys, who have different perspectives and, different aspects of the show, it's now all of a sudden – it's I never really paid much attention, who the guest stars are. Maybe you'd see a few people oh yeah, I know who that is. But now how they tie in with each other. I mean, it's been great. And it's just all about having fun, and I appreciate having fun with all of you,
Yeah. I consulted with Annabelle about this little project and about the Valentines episodes. And to make sure, and I was shocked. I thought there was more than just 2.
Well, and I just want to say that thank you both, Luigi and Steven. I feel so a part of a community where I don't at the beginning I didn't really feel like I should be part of it. Married with Children was a show for people who are older than me, but recently in the past 2 years, I've gotten into podcasting. I've got into how different shows can relate with others in different ways and how you can cross age lines and genre lines and popularity. I just love it. And it's just wonderful.
Here we are. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Luigi's, did you say you're from Queens?
That's right.
Yeah. Where are you from, Tyler?
I'm from the same place as Jamie, Michigan.
Yeah, see, and that's it, and I think it's just incredible that it brings all of these people from all over the country together. I mean, I don't know if it's overseas or not, but
two teachers and a former pastor.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But, and that's the thing. It's like this thing has brought a lot of people together, this show and the podcast.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking how incredible technology has put us closer together like this.
Oh yeah, like freaking Al. He's one of my according to Facebook, like recommended friends list, which pops up on all searches. And I'm sure she'll hear this. Chrissy PA. How you doing, Chrissy? Hope you're having fun with your Lady Gaga craziness. She's my now German friend. I've never had a contact in another country before, and I love it. All thanks from
I've got one in the UK.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the last thing I'll say is that I think it's wonderful, how interactive they are, because it's like I haven't really been big into podcasts, but the few that I've listened to, it's very much okay, the podcaster speaks to us, and that's us as the audience, and that's it. I mean, here it's like, okay, they post a new episode, and maybe we banter back and forth on some comments, and the following episode, it's like they're mentioning all of us,
Yeah.
I mean, and talking about oh, so and so made a comment on this, or blah blah, and it's great because and I encourage everyone to do that. And again, for those of you who are not on Patreon, if maybe there's a snippet of this that will appear on the main feed, it's like you should contribute. Because,
and maybe we can work it out with Alex that maybe if this becomes a recurring thing, we could totally probably just drop this on the free feed, this first episode, and say, hey, do you want more?
And I felt compelled. I don't know if you saw my Sam Kinison video.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Freaking
and
awesome.
I remember thinking, I know he was buried here in Tulsa when I was listening to that episode, and I thought, I'm going to go out there, and I want to make this for them. That was my goal, was to make it for them. I thought it would be a nice, cool thing, since I feel like I am part of this community, and that's what I want to do. And, that's why I go to church. I'm part of a community of people that care for each other.
And I'm part of no communities but this one. And I say that as a joke and as reality. I did not have any community. I didn't go to church. My friends all moved away to different parts. I'm stuck doing my own thing, and all the